Hey everyone, this is going to be a quick but fun video. As always, before we start, please like and subscribe. We're trying to get to 500 subscribers before the end of July. And now it's showtime because we are talking about the 1988 movie Beetlejuice. Now, Beetlejuice deserves a video that I'll do for it specifically. Today, we're going to be talking about a prequel that could be made for the movie. Now, in the original 1988 movie, we have Adam and Barbara, who are recently deceased, and we're gonna not focus on that movie itself right now. Instead, we're gonna focus on the information that we would have for a prequel. So, a little bit into the movie, Adam and Barbara, they have the Dietzes move in, and they're having trouble getting rid of them, and eventually they meet their caseworker, Juno. And when they are talking with Juno, she explains that they need to kind of up their game and figure out how to get rid of the Dietzes themselves. And at one point they say, oh, well, there's this other guy that we've kind of seen. Maybe we want to ask for his help, Beetle. And then, of course, Juno hushes them up and says, no, you don't want his help. In fact, I heard he's been creeping around you. And she gives the backstory. And the backstory of Beetlejuice is that he used to work with Juno. He was her assistant. And that he kind of went rogue. He started promoting himself as a bioexorcist, which is a great line, a great kind of framing. But he does not work well with others, she said. And she insists that you should not contact him, not to make another big mistake by releasing him essentially from the curse, which she doesn't really go into. But yeah, so that's part of the backstory. Another important part of the backstory is later on in the movie, Otho, who is like the uncle, he says that people who off themselves, meaning they don't die of natural causes, but they cause their own death, that they end up as civil servants in the afterlife. And when we meet Juno, she has kind of a hole in her neck. And when she smokes, the smoke comes out of her neck, so we can presume how she died. The receptionist also shows us her wrists, and we can presume how she dies. And in the back, we actually see a man who's hanged, and we can presume how he dies. Now, if Beetlejuice was an assistant to Juno, that also suggests that he did not die of natural causes, but rather offed himself. So I think that's an important part of the prequel as well. What I really like about this idea is Beetlejuice, the character, really holds the movie together, obviously. He's not the hero of the movie, but and it is fair to say that he's the villain, but he's a very likable villain. He's an enjoyable villain, just the character himself. He is dirty and raunchy, but also funny. He's not quite an anti-hero because, again, we can't describe him as a hero, but he is certainly what holds the movie together. And after the movie was a kind of hit, there was a spin-off cartoon. I remember watching the cartoon. And in that cartoon, Beetlejuice is kind of the main character, kind of a good guy. In that one, he's a bit more of an anti-hero. There was also a musical that got shut down right as COVID kind of took off. But the point is this character is kind of timeless. This character is good in any setting. And it would be really interesting to see this character when he's young, when he's just starting to go rogue, maybe when he's finding his voice. I kind of picture it to be a little bit like The Office, but set in the afterlife. Because again, they're caseworkers, they're civil servants. It's like the DMV for the deceased. And there's an office element to that. There's a kind of Dunder Mifflin vibe to it. And you can almost imagine Beetlejuice maybe being Dwight in that space, but whereas Dwight is kind of always subdued and kind of always held back, in this case, maybe Beetlejuice is the Dwight who, unleashes all hell and really does go rogue and becomes the bioexorcist that he always wanted to be. Again, I don't quite have the plot for it. Maybe there's a little bit of a love story I can imagine as well. Again, using characters that we know, I would say it's between Beetlejuice and maybe the receptionist. But again, I'm totally grasping at straws here. I don't know the plot of this prequel, but I do know that great movies like Beetlejuice do world building. And there is world building in that movie. And that means that there's room for sequels or prequels. And I really like the idea of a prequel to the movie Beetlejuice. we'd call it Beetlejuice Before the Haunting. And it would basically explain how Beetlejuice became who he is, how he got isolated from the rest of the afterlife world, and kind of sets up the scene right before we see him again in the 1988 movie. Also, I will say this real quick. Michael Keaton, with CGI today, could play that role. Michael Keaton could easily jump in. I'm sure they could find ways with the makeup and then CGI to make him look young. And, there are probably other people that could play Beetlejuice, but wouldn't you want it to be played by Michael Keaton? And he's still, I think, at the top of his game. Again, peace and love.